Before we get into the video, please consider subscribing, liking, and clicking the Discord link down below. Lots of cool stuff going on down there as we basically talk about nerd stuff and whatever else. That said, enjoy. What's up everyone, Gojin the Makai Phantom approaching ya. So some of you are probably like, Gojin, there's something different about you. And that's, I'm not wearing my hat. And why is that? Because unlike other weebs, I decided to groom myself for a change instead of underage children. But as a weeb, I actually found a reason to take interest in one of the most iconic horror game franchises of all time, Resident Evil, also known as Biohazard in Japan, is easily one of the defining series of survival horror in all of gaming. Whether it be the influence it'd carry in other iconic horror titles around the time, forced fucked up marriage ending up with an unwanted child being Devil May Cry, along with still having an impact on the genre till this day. Of course, all art is derivative to something else, and by that I mean just some friendly plagiarism. Resident Evil, though, is a tad different, as it's basically what I could only describe as a secondhand adaptation to a Tokusatsu J-horror film titled Sweet Home. Why do I call it a secondhand adaptation? Because Sweet Home spawned a movie license game from Capcom and Shinji Mikami that would get loosely remade in 1996 under the title Biohazard. That and this is just fucking cancerous.
Captain Wesker, where's Chris?
Stop it! Don't open that door!
But Chris is...
What is it?
Now, all you Japanese exclusive weeps are probably wanting me to shut the fuck up about RE and move on to Sweet Home's history. And what I have to say to that is, what history? Closest I could gather about this movie's background, outside the movie and game coming out in the same year, and its Resident Evil connections, are it's directed by J-horror legend Kyoshi Kurosawa, who'd become famous for works like Pulse and Cure. No, not that shit, take your emo sister somewhere else. And produced by Juzo Itami, who actually plays Yamamuta here. However, it is alleged Kyoshi Kurosawa has disowned this film, as rumor has it Itami felt the movie needed some touch-ups that appeal more to the mainstream, and reshot some scenes Kurosawa wasn't happy with. Thus, it is believed Kurosawa's cut is still down in Toho Studios somewhere, but hasn't been released on any physical copies, with the current film already being a clusterfuck to get a hold of as is. Now, keep in mind, I researched my ass off to find a definitive source for this, and I couldn't find anything. I'm not saying it didn't happen, I'm just saying you're full of shit. But let's dive into Sweet Home and see if it deserved more attention beyond its cult following formed by Resident Evil fans and J-horror/tokusatsu enthusiasts, or if it should remain forgotten. A TV network decides to shoot their documentary at the well-known Mamiya Mansion, a believed-to-be haunted house met with nothing but tragic stories. After dealing with them pushed back by those with access to the house key, they eventually get permission to shoot their film, but soon regrets it after crossing paths with some unexpected turn of events. Story of Sweet Home is kind of the traditional old mansion fare that been around for decades on, but what makes it unique is the film's creative approach to things. It has the absurdity of Evil Dead and Poltergeist with none other than fucking monsters, where this concept was able to be tweaked into Resident Evil. Come on, at the beginning of the movie you have a dude emptying sand from his goddamn shoe.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
But these layers of slight silliness added keep the film in check, because they're all in place of the scenarios they should be in. It's straight-faced enough to begin the movie in a fairly serious way, but has just the right level of quirkiness to let you in on the fun ride we're about to step into. Sure, not everything is spoon-fed to you on what is going on, but that's kind of the appeal of these types of movies a lot of haunted house films tend to fall short on. The crazy borderline limitless shit a spirit can do to fuck with your mind. And on rewatch, I understand what was going on a lot better if my interpretation of the events are correct. That psychological edge at these minor things we'd see bits from introduced earlier in the story to subtly revealing what was happening by showing us a similar aspect around the main characters made it more thought-provoking. And that's kinda a lost art, because why fuck with the mind when these kids are already getting shit-faced as it is? But why does this work so well? good suspenseful pacing with how each plot point is sparsely introduced around the film. But you better be paying attention. Put down the coke, Jack. Now, unfortunately, there is some sheer horror movie stupidity here. Like, why the hell is she looking back at the thing following her? Why does she keep falling on the ground, struggling to get back up even though she isn't injured? Come on, guys, stop doing this shit. It ain't scary, it's just annoying. However, besides a few errors in the script here and there, I am satisfied with how the overall plot turned out. It moves just right and is creepy yet also fun as hell. Pretty easy to see where the Resident Evil franchise got its campy yet serious approach that still is present till this day even. But without further ado, let's get into the cast of characters. Yeah, nobody in this movie is gonna win any awards, even though some of them are pretty good established actors. But them and the writer only do a fine job with their characters. My favorite part is the romantic bond between Akiko and Kazuo with daughter Emi pushing them together, as I think most of us have our moments we can relate to this. It can be heartwarming as a film knows to take its good old time with the characters sitting down, getting into their intentions before it's too late. Nako's energy as Emi is so fun, and I love how her cocky attitude swiftly changes to a pout when Kazuo compared her to her late mother when she's trying to talk him into asking out Akiko.
何が不憤よ。私だっていつまでもうちにいるわけじゃないんだから。この旅行で蹴りつけてよね。私そのつもりで来たんだよ。
ああ、そっくりになってきやがったな。
何？
死んだ母さんにそっくりだよ、その言い方。
悪かったわね、そっくりで。そうだ、私家の中体験して。
The father and daughter dynamic between them is absolutely adorable. Age difference really shows, with Kazuo wanting to approach a relationship but is too shy to ask, so his playful, loving daughter came as an attempt to push him into doing it without holding any punches. She's no different with Akiko. She wants a new mother just like the rest of us. Oh, Joey! Mama-san! She makes it 100% known that she is aware the feelings on both ends are shared. And it's charming how she wants to know the details, like if Akiko has ever been a mother.
あきこさん。子供は産まないの?
And by Akiko's reactions, she can definitely see what Emi's doing and finds it cute, but also a bit embarrassing. And that can literally describe Kurosawa's thoughts on Itami's changes. Like, she is literally saying shit like this.
あきこさんってさ、結婚しないの?
それはいつかはするわよ、私だって。
じゃあしちゃえばいいのに。ねえ、早くしちゃおうよ。
そんなこと言ったってエミちゃん。これは相手のあることだからね。
She's trying so damn hard to tell Emi there's nothing between us, but isn't very good at hiding it. Now, I'll be honest, there is a point in the movie her performance was admittedly kinda bad that I'll get into in a bit. But Emi's later reactions to the house, however, come across as the place literally corrupted her damn childhood. Like, you can just see how terrified she is in prior encounters with the place. This entire thing has brought out many emotions in Emi to grow as a person, beginning from naive and childish to scared and distraught to confident and level-headed, being the one who ultimately saves the day without spoiling too much. Akiko, without a doubt, when she starts talking to Kazuo about curses and he bursts out laughing, that sudden shift to anger finds its way, and I applaud the actress for nailing the timing of it. By the way Shingo Yamashita portrays Kazuo, he isn't trying to be mean to her. He thinks it's sweet she's worried about him on things he doesn't even believe, but you can understand why she'd take it as him being a dick. But the shift of emotions isn't perfect, as when Akiko realizes she got too emotional, she moves her head around, sniffles a bit, and apologizes. No real form of emotional change from the actress. But again, don't take that as me saying she's bad. By the second half of the film, she's very different from the cheerful woman we got at the beginning, and the whole reason we're able to notice that is Nobiko Miyamoto putting in the fear and exhaustion into her performance. Same could be said for Shingo Yamashita as Kazuo. First half, he's not taking the situation all that seriously, but when the house begins getting to him, he looks fairly stressed out. Even though, again, it just comes across as minor irritation since neither one here is really giving the role their all. Though my favorite part with him is definitely at the beginning of the movie when he's trying to get access to the key of the mansion with pushback from the housekeepers.
いわゆるあれだろ、ふるさと紹介とか郷土料理とか温泉巡りとか、これそういう番組だよね。まあだったら間宮亭もいいが、せっかく来たんなら 上古峠の千年松あらあんた幹の太さ日本一だからね。あれを取材しなさいよあんた。
まあ
You can tell from looking at him and listening to his quiet, awkward delivery. Even though he's agreeing, he doesn't give one fuck about seeing an oversized pine tree because he knows that shit ain't getting views. Well, eat a bag of dicks. I'm sitting on my couch talking about movies I watched and people still don't give a fuck about me. Then there's Asuka, played by Fukumi Kurada. When they're shooting her in the building, you can tell she's attempting to keep her delivery as professional as can be, but she starts rushing through as she's clearly starting to panic, making her eventual scream have build up to it. However, there is one scene that is a bit poorly executed in my opinion. That being the part they begin panicking. It didn't really do it for me. It was over the top, her screaming face doesn't have an ounce of fear, and unfortunately, Emi's concern seemed so fake. It's the Japanese equivalent of this.
What? No.
Now, after that, they quickly make up for it when Asuka looks completely traumatized. She's speaking quietly, her face is stuck in one emotion, and she's undoubtedly afraid. Through the rest of the movie, that bit of trauma, while not to the same level, it is present regardless, given you can easily tell she's no longer that passionate journalist we were introduced to early on.
I think we went through the back door. Everybody dies.
If only we could be so lucky. How about Ryo Taguchi, played by Ichiro Furachi? He's chopped liver, fuck off. Jokes aside, I feel like he doesn't really do much for the team other than simply being the photographer. He isn't terrible. You can see how he shifts from somewhat pervy to freaking out a bit when Asuka starts acting weird, but he doesn't really do anything to stand out besides having a similar getup to Barry Burton like Asuka does Jill Valentine. Main issue being he's hardly a goddamn character. As for Yamamuta, who's actually played by Judo Itami himself, who is also the real-life husband to Akiko's actress Nobuko Miyamoto, I think he's probably at his best when he's helping Akiko and Kazuo get Emi back, as he comes across most serious given he's willing to simply risk his own life for it, knowing full well he'll die.
何を泣いている。お前には幸せな過去があっただろう。楽しい思い出がいくらでもあるはずだ。
His yells at the spirit gave more fear and stress than anger, which is important to distinguish the difference on scenes like these, especially when he was yelling at our characters prior for different reasons. As stated, the cast here are serviceable. Besides one, we are given time to know everyone as a character and see how they change throughout the course of the film. I just think it would have been nice to get a bit more meat to bite into, and for the actors/actresses to crank up the delivery just a bit for stronger impact, but I'm not complaining. But where this movie shines the brightest is the cinematography and the special effects work. This shot from out the corner doesn't show us anything. We as the viewers still aren't aware what's in this house. But regardless, we are forced to see from its perspective, creating a strong level of eeriness. Also, is it just me, or this might be where the fixed camera angles came from horror games would become known for in the 90s and early 2000s? When Emi starts running out the door with the camera shaking above her, that looked like it came straight out of Evil Dead from the site of the Deadites. Which, this makes the house seem more alive because we're given the impression in this area, she's all fucking eyes. There's no room for safety. When we're revealed everything from our character's perspective, that is the chef's kiss. If you couldn't tell, this film was on a budget despite being a Toho product, but that didn't stop them from crafting some amazing special effect work. That baby moves like it's suffering and the detail on its face is really grotesque. It's even more disturbing when you realize why it looks like that.
ある朝間宮夫人はいつものように地下室へ降り焼却炉のコックをひねったんだ。それがどうして？よちよち歩きを始めたばかりの赤ん坊が焼却炉に入り込んで遊んでいたのさ。事件の後、この地方一帯の赤ん坊が何人も神隠しにあった。犯人は間宮夫人だった。
No sir, they're called Kennys, and that's quite a normal reaction after watching the entire Showa era of Gamera. But seriously, some of this shit you wonder how they even pulled off at the time. Showing the girl's face in darkness before watching the details crack through was a stroke of genius, as it allowed them to put their limitations to greater use. And this is absolutely disgusting. We are put in position to watch this guy literally fall apart in front of our eyes. We see the skin peeling off, the bones cracking, fluids pouring out. That's impressive craft right there. Now, in terms of the monsters, if you couldn't tell, they are basically just different forms of one entity opposed to multiple. But each one has their own level of creepiness and do their own thing to taunt the characters. Certainly interesting seeing how the monsters from Resident Evil, including the goddamn zombies, were simply tweaked concept of the monstrous forms of a ghost. The final monster looks amazing. The skin is wet and fleshy to imply tears from the loss of her eye. The skin stretches with movement. The lightning effect is perfectly intertwined with it. And its size looks great against the actresses. They built that shit, and as ugly as the monster is, seeing it switch from anger to tears of joy blew my mind. This is all phenomenal tokusatsu work. Musically speaking, Masaya Matsuda goes for something a little bit different than what you'd expect. The track on their way to the mansion might seem out of place in a horror movie due to it being so high energy, and what's expected of the genre is mostly dark and gritty. But this is why it worked, because on their way there, it seemed like an adventure. They didn't know the shithole they were getting themselves in, because as far as they were concerned, they were given a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But the moment they walk in that house, that energy changes now that they're getting a taste of the dark and mysterious. That's why it makes a comeback when they're giving the place a makeover, because that's what it was. A taste from a broken down house. But that's the thing. The horror shows its face piece by piece. So even when hints of scary things occur, there's still room for comfort to come in between. Like when the girls are sitting down to have a conversation. But when it is eerie, god damn. Tell me this scene with all its fucked up imagery doesn't put a chill down your spine. But that scene in general is just a goddamn acid trip.
Asuka. 綺麗だよ。
私の赤ちゃんを返して。
Such a strong use of suspense. The fact nobody even dies at this part makes it all the more uncomfortable. Sets the tone of things might seem fine right now, but just you wait. Visions of Love brings in all the right tragedy, matching the loss of one of their friends. Very immersive on the shock and sadness they are feeling. But even after all this, there's room for small moments such as the little song by Yamamuda. It was a nice tone calmer as it helped us and the characters realize the situation might be tough, but regardless, we can't let it get to our heads. The ending track tying everything in a tight little bow. It is a beautiful piece that tells the emotion from the perspective of everybody, including the monster. While lives were lost, the trouble this place could cause is now at peace, and our cast of characters are free to live their lives onward. At the end of the day, Sweet Home is a pretty solid entry in the supernatural horror genre. It might not be one of the best, but man, watching this movie helped me realize how boring a lot of haunted house films actually are. I know to many people, less is more, and this type of thing is very subjective given it has a major reliance on one's preference. But man, this film here has imagination. There's a reason they were able to tweak this haunted house story into Resident Evil. Biggest differences being instead of psychological creations from one powerful entity, it's zombies and actual monsters, and instead of a crew coming to film a documentary, it's a team of police officers sent to investigate the mansion. And, of course, an expansion amongst the story. But if you're a fan of Resident Evil, creative horror movies, or tokusatsu, definitely give this underrated gem a look. I'm gonna give Sweet Home a solid 7 out of 10. Anyway, that was it for this episode of what is hopefully Spooktober time, and not just a one-off Halloween special. I got more in the works. This ended up getting delayed longer than I would have preferred due to me having a much more taxing project in the editing software, but that's just how it goes. But that all said, subscribe to this channel if you want to see more nerd shit. We talk about movies, TV shows, video games, and on the podcast, even more. This is Gojin the Makai Phantom, leaving the building.